Normandy, June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach. Dawn had barely broken when chaos exploded across the sand. Landing craft burned, men screamed, and German MG-42 fire tore the air into shreds. Hunched behind the blackened hull of a ruined Sherman, First Lieutenant James Parker of the 29th Infantry fought to stay alive. But Parker had something more valuable than cover, a weapon that didn't fire bullets. From his web gear, he pulled a small, olive-drab box, the SCR-536 Handy-Talkie. Just 5 pounds, a 40-inch antenna, and the miracle of instant communication. He snapped it open, pressed the switch, and spoke into the storm. Easy 6, this is Easy 2. Tötimen pin.shu. Requesting covering fire, bearing 285. The reply cut through the static almost instantly. Easy 2, copy. Naval guns on standby. Hold position. In the middle of hell itself, Parker and his men had a lifeline that the enemy could not match. Thousands of miles away, in Chicago's Galvin manufacturing plant, another shift of workers had just finished assembling 200 more SCR-536 units. By 1945, more than 130,000 would be produced, each one hand-built, each one destined for a battlefield where seconds meant survival. Meanwhile, Japan's ground forces fought with barely any radios at all. Their Type 94-6 portable set had a range of just 1 kilometer, and fewer than 1,500 were ever produced. Most infantry battalions had none. Orders moved by runners, bugle calls, and field wires that were cut again and again by artillery fire. A Japanese commander could plan brilliantly on paper, but once the battle began, his voice was trapped miles away. The Germans fared little better. Their torn-out food W1 weighed 45 pounds, needed 2 men to operate, and was so bulky that battalions usually received only 1 or 2 sets. While Parker could talk directly to his company commander from the surf, a German rifle platoon often fought blind, awaiting orders carried on foot through smoke and shrapnel. The revolution had begun years earlier, when Donald Mitchell of Galvin Manufacturing saw National Guard maneuvers collapse simply because radios were stuck inside vehicles. He knew modern warfare demanded something portable, a radio that followed men into combat, not one left behind in a truck. By 1941, his team had created the prototype that became the SCR-536. The results were immediate. During Operation Torch in North Africa, American infantry stormed ashore carrying the new radios. After-action reports praised their value in coordinating small unit maneuvers in real time. A company commander could adapt his tactics instantly instead of waiting on runners or wires. Flexibility replaced rigidity. By 1944, each U.S. rifle company carried at least 6 Handy-Talkies, one for every platoon leader, plus extras for weapons teams and headquarters. An infantry battalion could field nearly 30 of them, forming a living network that connected platoons, companies, and battalions all the way back to naval gunfire control. The Japanese, by contrast, clung to rigid pre-battle timetables. Their commanders expected units to fight without guidance once an attack began. On paper, it looked disciplined. In practice, against Americans who could redirect artillery in seconds, it was a disaster. On Omaha Beach, that disaster played out in real time. Parker spoke to his fellow platoon leaders across 300 yards of bullet-swept sand. One reported clearing a gap in the wire. Another confirmed mortar teams were in place. Within minutes, Easy Company moved with coordinated precision, while their German opponents, cut off from headquarters, fought in fragments. Major General Leonard Jarrow, commanding V Corps, maintained an unbroken chain of communication from offshore command ships down to rifle squads on the beach. His German counterpart, General Major Dietrich Kreis of the 352nd Infantry Division, was nearly blind. Artillery had shredded his telephone lines. Runners vanished into firestorms, and entire sectors went silent for hours. When counterattacks were needed most, Kreis could not even find his companies. The technical specifications of the SCR-536 seemed modest. Half a watt of output, 1 mile range on land, 3 over water. But what mattered was portability. What mattered was that a single lieutenant could carry the battlefield's most decisive weapon in one hand. Japanese officers captured on Saipan later admitted their companies often fought for hours without orders, while American Marines simply pressed a button and summoned mortars, tanks, or naval fire. One Japanese battalion commander confessed bitterly that by the time his runners reached him with reports, the Americans were already in his rear. The Germans recognized the advantage but could never mass-produce an equivalent. Their factories were consumed by radar, U-boat equipment, and tank radios. Infantry sets came last, and by then it was far too late. From the sugarcane fields of Saipan to the blood-soaked cliffs of Normandy, the SCR-536 Handy-Talkie gave American units speed, flexibility, and the ability to fight as one. It wasn't just a radio. It was the invisible thread that tied squads to companies, companies to battalions, and battalions to the immense firepower of the Allied war machine. On June 6, 1944, as Lieutenant Parker's voice cut through the storm at Omaha Beach, the world witnessed a new truth of modern war. The side that controls communication controls the battlefield. In the rear areas of the battlefield, forward observers often accompanied rifle platoons. They carried SCR-536 radios, tuned to the company network, so they could speak directly with company commanders. The commanders then relayed fire requests through SCR-300 backpack radios to battalion fire control centers. This system gave Marine rifle companies the ability to call devastating artillery fire onto Japanese positions within minutes. Forward observers watched the shells land and quickly radioed corrections through the Handy-Talkie network, achieving accuracy that once required hours of adjustment with telephones or signal flags. Japanese soldiers repeatedly reported in their documents that American artillery fire arrived with shocking speed and precision, never realizing that the Marines had a complete radio network linking the front lines to firing batteries within seconds. The German experience with American radio superiority was different. The Wehrmacht valued communications and had advanced signal equipment at division and regimental levels. But at the battalion and company level, the gap was clear. German infantry platoons lacked radios, while their American counterparts had instant voice contact with higher headquarters. During the Sicilian campaign in 1943, German Panzer Grenadier and Hermann Göring divisions tried to delay the American advance. Yet, time and again, they found themselves outmaneuvered. U.S. infantry units seemed to move with uncanny coordination, concentrating forces quickly, exploiting weak points, and meeting counterattacks with speed. Captured German officers admitted this was due to superior American tactical communications. Major Friedrich von Sponeck, operations officer of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division, wrote in September 1943 that American rifle companies appear to have the communications power of an entire German battalion headquarters. Every U.S. platoon leader could report enemy contact, call for support, and coordinate with neighboring units using personal radios. German rifle companies, by contrast, relied on runners and field telephones, which meant delays of minutes or even hours compared to the Americans' near-instant response. Von Sponeck urged German authorities to develop similar equipment, but Germany's limited resources and collapsing industry meant nothing was done. The same communication gap plagued Italy. Italian divisions relied almost entirely on telephones and motorcycle messengers. Once Allied artillery cut their telephone lines, Italian commanders quickly lost control. This weakness caused defensive lines in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy to collapse in the face of Allied attacks. The Italian campaign highlighted these differences clearly. The mountainous terrain funneled combat into narrow valleys where quick communication was vital. Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez of the 88th Infantry Division recalled how his platoon leader, Lieutenant Thomas Walsh, always carried an SCR-536 and used it dozens of times each day, reporting enemy positions, requesting artillery, confirming objectives, and coordinating with nearby platoons. Rodriguez never saw Germans with an equivalent system. Captured prisoners were shocked to learn that every American platoon leader carried his own radio, something their units could not imagine. These small advantages added up across thousands of battles, giving U.S. units a constant edge even against stronger or more experienced enemies. Behind this success was American industry. Motorola, then known as the Galvin Manufacturing Company, had been mass-producing commercial radios since the 1930s. This gave them the expertise to produce tens of thousands of reliable military radios at low cost. Japan lacked this civilian base, while Germany, though technically advanced, faced crippling resource shortages by 1943. German engineers tried to design handheld radios like the Feldfew series, but they never produced them in significant numbers. At higher levels, radios allowed bold operations like General Patton's lightning advance across France in 1944. His Third Army moved hundreds of miles in weeks, yet maintained constant contact from headquarters down to platoons. A seamless chain of communication, Handy-Talkies at platoon level, SCR-300s at battalion level, and larger vehicle sets at division level, kept the Army coordinated even in chaotic mobile warfare. Post-war studies confirmed what soldiers already knew. American ground forces had overwhelming communication superiority. German and Japanese officers consistently pointed to U.S. radios as a key factor behind American battlefield success. A 1946 Japanese staff report admitted that American rifle companies had 10 times more radios than their Japanese counterparts, a gap that no amount of training or morale could overcome. The SCR-536 itself served into the Korean War before being replaced by transistorized radios. But the principle it introduced, that every small unit leader should carry a personal radio, became standard worldwide. Today, soldiers from every nation carry radios, just as American troops did in 1942. For men like Lieutenant Parker, who carried his SCR-536 from Omaha Beach through Normandy, France, Belgium, and into Germany, the little olive-drab radio was more than equipment. It was a lifeline. After the war, he brought it home as a souvenir. Later, he would tell his children that the radio had saved his life countless times, helping him call for fire support, report enemy positions, and keep his platoon connected. And that, he said, was how America won the war. Not just with weapons or numbers, but with communication that turned scattered soldiers into a unified, unstoppable force.